Okay, right, let's do this. Suicide Squad is the third movie to take place in the DC Expanded Universe, and it's an interesting one. I thought this movie was overwhelmingly mediocre. I feel like it had a lot of potential that it didn't quite reach, but it wasn't a bad film. Sure, it was an uneven film in both editing and tone, but it's not as bad as Batman v Superman. It seems to me like DC wanted to create a film where they could just sprinkle in a bunch of new characters to their world and give the audience a whole bunch of backstories. And in terms of that, it is successful. The amount of comic characters that we now have in the DCEU has pretty much doubled thanks to this movie. And you know what's even better? These are actually likeable characters. Because, you know, the Batman and the Superman of this universe are kind of assholes. So let's discuss these new characters. The character I was most anticipating going into this movie was Harley Quinn, and I must say, Margot Robbie was fantastic. She portrays an absolutely delightful Harley. She's fun and bubbly, but can also be dark and mischievous when she needs to be. I was not disappointed. Also, you may have noticed, she is incredibly attractive. Will Smith played Deadshot, and I enjoyed him a lot more than I thought I would. Which is not to say that I thought he would suck or anything, he just did such a great job with the character. I think this is a perfect role for Smith because he doesn't completely dominate the movie, but he has a lot of great material to work with and therefore steals a fair bit of the spotlight. He's as cool as you want a Will Smith character to be.
Y'all jokers must be crazy.
Amanda Waller was portrayed really well by Viola Davis. She was dark, manipulative, and kind of a bitch, just like in the comics. So it was perfect. The only thing I can say about Rick Flag is that he was fine as a character, although it's a shame that he wasn't played by Tom Hardy. The Joker was as screwed up and creepy as you've come to expect from the trailers. Jared Leto gives a pretty good performance, as expected, but there wasn't enough to warrant all those stories of his crazy method acting nonsense. He stayed in character for the whole time during the shoot, and now, having seen the movie, I really don't think that it was worth it. He only gets about 15 minutes of screen time after all. I also don't like how sexualized the characterization of the Joker was. He is clearly attracted to Harley, and he is fiercely protective of her, which is weird and not the point of their relationship at all. I think I need to see this Joker up against Batman to make a legitimate decision on whether or not I like him. Killer Croc looks really cool, but it's a shame that he wore his jacket for a fair chunk of the film. I understand that it saves time and money that would be spent on prosthetics, but he just looked far cooler when you could see his scaly chest. I also don't think that they utilised the fact that they had an actor instead of CGI. I appreciated it, but at the end of the day, there wasn't enough actual acting on display from him to warrant having an actor play him. Diablo is a much more interesting character than anticipated. I haven't seen this actor before, but I think this could be Jay Hernandez's big break. He tries to avoid getting involved for the first half of the movie, so you have to wait for his payoff, but don't worry, it does come. He's also one of the few characters to get a story arc, perhaps even the only character, now that I think about it. Captain Boomerang, although very funny, seemed underused. I was pleasantly surprised by Jai Courtney though, as his previous acting roles all seemed to be generic tough guys. This is a good change for him. There was a joke about a pink unicorn though that was connected to him, and I think it really fell flat, or I didn't get the laughs it was going for. Katana was also very underused. It's a shame that we didn't see more cool swordplay from her. I also think they missed an opportunity to expand on her relationship with the sword. It is magic after all. And lastly, Slipknot. Don't you worry about Slipknot. You probably don't even know who that is, right? Yeah, like I said, don't worry about it. So as I mentioned earlier, the pacing was a bit off. The first act of the movie seemed like it was in a rush to tell us the background of each of the members, and therefore we got several flashbacks. These felt very jarring, and I think they could have been handled better. This whole section seemed to be one long, overdrawn montage. These flashbacks often contained a cameo from Batman, or in Boomerang's case, another future member of the Justice League. And that was awesome. Thankfully, DC have realised that we don't like it when Batman kills, so they don't have him breaking any necks in this film. One way to get on my good side is to show me some cool Batman stuff. So I've got to admit, that stuff worked on me. It made me very happy. Unfortunately, Batman was just a very small part from the beginning of the movie. The film's other attempts to make me happy didn't work so well. For example, the soundtrack. I like the soundtrack, but it was used too excessively. It made a lot of scenes feel like they were part of a music video, which isn't exactly what I want from this movie. That works for the trailers, but now that we're in the movie, I expect more substance. It seemed like the director had watched Guardians of the Galaxy, noticed how they used classic pop music to great effect, and wanted to imitate that. However, in Guardians, the music actually meant something to the protagonist, and therefore it fit well with the story. Suicide Squad's music just seemed to be a cheap trick to make the audience think that it's having fun. Sometimes it works, but the fact is that this burst of fun and upbeat music happens too often, and it's very noticeable. So anyway, the team is assembled and then they get sent on their mission, and from here on out, the movie begins to feel like a video game. They progress to an area, then they fight a bunch of faceless bad guys, then they progress to another area, and repeat. They do this right up until the boss fight at the climax of the movie.
Look at the pretty lights.
Obviously, this isn't a particularly interesting progression of the story, and it's not like the action sequences even make up for that. The fighting is mainly just shooting and bludgeoning the bad guys. With this cast of characters, I was expecting much more. Yes, I get that Deadshot's speciality is shooting, but why not make him do trick shots? Make him move around more. Just something. Show off Harley's gymnastic abilities. I want to see Croc bite someone's head off. Is that too much to ask for? At least we get Diablo finally setting things on fire about halfway through the movie.
Hey, you're the fire bloke, eh? Well, looky here. Fire!
Okay, I said it wasn't a bad movie, didn't I? So let's discuss more of the good things. As I mentioned, the cast were all pretty spot on. Also, I think the characters all looked great. The costume and makeup department on this film did a fantastic job, especially with Margot Robbie. Did I mention how good she looks? I would say that these characters are instantly recognisable, and we won't be forgetting them anytime soon. The special effects were also very impressive. I don't really appreciate that the majority of the movie revolved around them reaching this massive light in the sky, but it still looked impressive. So, points for that, I guess. I also like how Enchantress looked in this movie. I don't actually like what she did in the movie and thought she was kind of disappointing as the film's main antagonist. Her motivation and the reasons for her actions were left very unclear, but as I said before, it still looked cool. So, more points. I think that the Suicide Squad as a concept is already gift-wrapped for filmmakers to adapt, and I think it's a real shame that this one was kind of subpar. All you have to do for a film like this is take a bunch of interesting bad guys and send them on an interesting mission. I believe that Suicide Squad got a bunch of interesting bad guys, but did not send them on an interesting mission, and that's the real pitfall of this film. Because this is still such an interesting concept, and the characters are all rather entertaining, I think I would still recommend that you go see this film, especially if you did enjoy Batman v Superman. Just don't get too hyped. Anyway, thanks for watching another one of my reviews. For more geeky good stuff just like this, please subscribe to the channel. Also, please leave a like and comment on what your thoughts on the movie were. Have you seen it yet? Do you want to see it? Are you going to? Who's your favourite member of the Suicide Squad? What would you like to see in the sequels? Let's start a conversation.